What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? We're back once again today, guys. I told you it was going to be a packed weekend here, and we're definitely not going to disappoint you whatsoever, ladies and gentlemen. We had two, or I should say technically three panels that just dropped back to back on DC Fandom. We had the Multiverse 101, followed right back up with the Flash panel, and then right after that, we had the Suicide Squad panel also, ladies and gentlemen. So the first one we're going to be tackling for you guys today, we just did Wonder Woman at the top of noon. We're back to go ahead and talk about the Flash and actually mix in that Multiverse one-on-one panel together and talk a little bit about both, considering the fact that they are pretty attached at the hip, if you will. And then later on this afternoon, once we're wrapped up with this, we're definitely going to be coming back to talk with you guys about the Suicide Squad also. So let's get into some Flash panel and Multiverse one-on-one talk, ladies and gentlemen, because it's not just myself. The team is in fact back, ladies and gentlemen. We're here all afternoon to go ahead and give you guys our live thoughts in regards to all the panels this week. Fellas, man, back to back with the Multiverse one-on-one and the Flash. What did you guys think overall?
All hail Greg Berlanti.
I was going to say, doing this along with the multiverse panel, like back to back, and talking about both of them was probably the smart move, because it definitely feels like one of the biggest things that they've been bringing up about this Flash movie is that this is going to be the first time on the movie side of things that we really explore that multiverse of the DC universe. So it's exciting, man.
Yeah, I'm super excited also. A couple people that we have in the chat with us today. We got AJ certainly up in here. We got Alec making their presence known, of course. So thank you very much, guys, for certainly coming through. He says, which Flash panel, the show or the movie? This is, in fact, the movie, ladies and gentlemen. I think the Flash panel is later on this afternoon, if I'm not mistaken.
The only Flash that matters.
But as of right now, this is in fact going to be for the Flash movie. So for the Flash panel in general, it was only like 10 minutes long, guys, to be honest with you. But I personally thought it was really fun, considering the fact that they only had maybe 3-4 people on there. We did have Christina Hodgson, who did the script, Andy Muschietti, who's the director, coming over from It, if I'm not mistaken, and of course Ezra Miller himself, growing out his hair and the beard, almost looking like some cult leader over there. But I honestly really enjoyed this panel. The editing was perfect. The music selections behind everything were great. I just thought it was a really fun panel, along with the Flash facts from Ezra Miller. So nice little touch for something that's only 10 minutes long, though.
Mm-hmm. I think one thing that was good for me going into the Flash panel is that I kind of knew they hadn't even started shooting. So I knew that it's not like we could expect a trailer or anything like that. And I think there was a fun self-awareness to that. So they were just like, hey, we don't really have much that we can show them without spoiling anything. So let's just make a really fun panel. And then at the end, we'll show them some concept art. And I even love like kind of the little bit of a troll that there was right before the concept art, where you think you're getting rickrolled. But I think that was more to just like indicate, yes, we're sorry we don't have a trailer, but we're at least giving you something, So I did love that at the end of the panel.
I really dug the concept art as far as the suit went. It did look a little Iron Spiderish to me, but maybe that's because it was dark. You couldn't see it. Like the only thing you could see were like the yellow goldish lines and stuff lit up. But the poses and everything really took me back to reading, a lot about the Flash. Urza seems like he's really in to play the role. He's winning me over a little bit when it comes to him playing the character, but a lot of the information we got in the Multiverse 101 is what really made me be okay, what was going on in the Flash movie.
And I'm bouncing off of that in regards to the concept art. So yeah, so while we didn't get ourselves any brand new trailers or anything like that, clearly because they haven't started filming for this, we did get ourselves some brand new concept art to go ahead and showcase that brand new costume that Indy was certainly talking about here. So one of the things that Andy Muschietti and Christina Hodgson did talk about in here is that, yes, Barry Allen will in fact be getting himself a brand new suit. There are plenty of people out there that I know was kind of on the the fence about Ezra Miller's suit to kind of begin with, in regards to maybe not necessarily liking it. Some people certainly did, but I always felt it was a mixed bag. So this is something that they're definitely addressing here. Seeing the growth of the character, the evolution of the Flash, clearly with a brand new costume here. And you're absolutely right. Like, there are elements to this suit, Indy, that they're certainly still hiding from us, that we aren't going to get the full footage of, or showcase to us as of yet. But they're definitely pushing just the lightning sort of lines, or whatever the case may be, the glowing lines through his costume. So we did get this concept art, and we also got this concept art as well to kind of showcase the brand new costume. And if you guys look from this concept art here, if you look at who the Batman is in the background, that is in fact Michael Keaton's Batman, ladies and gentlemen. Make no mistake about it. You can still see the yellow emblem on there. I mean, the costume, the cape, the cowl definitely looks like that of Michael Keaton. So at least that's to me. Do you guys see Michael Keaton's Batman there, or what?
That's exactly what it looks like. That's the exact costume from the Michael Keaton Batman movie. And what's really interesting is that he looks the same age that he did in 1989. So I'm wondering is if, because I was under the impression when he was announced to be reprising his role in this film, I thought it was going to be like he jumps into that universe, but it's going to be in present day. So it was going to be Michael Keaton at his current age. But given the fact that, with how easy de-aging people is nowadays, I'm wondering if that's what they're going with. It is if like this part of the movie will actually take place not only on that universe, but at that timeline of 1989. So you get to see a younger looking Michael Keaton because of that.
I got something for you. What if that is the suit and that is Michael Keaton's character, like the way he played Batman? But what if you do get him older? But then it's Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton's suit playing him back in 1989.
Dude, you just made my head explode just trying to think of like the time traveling that would take. Like, holy crap, just all the multiverse stuff included. I'm really fascinated to see if that's going to be Michael Keaton as old Michael Keaton, still rocking that same suit, or a part of me feels like we'll still see an older Michael Keaton, Bruce Wayne, maybe even still a younger version of him. I wouldn't be surprised if we got to see both elements, but it does fascinate me that one of the concept art ideas is to see Batman and the Flash fighting alongside, it seems like. So I don't know exactly fully what the story is gonna have for us, but I can tell you what, man, just the concept art alone certainly has me pumped for where this movie certainly will go. They did also talk a little bit about the idea of the time traveling story, just Andy Muschietti's directing work, how he can kind of go from the idea of fun to scary, the idea of Christina Hodgson's really trying to sort of find the heart of this story, and really being able to kind of give Barry Allen sort of a vulnerability that we maybe haven't necessarily seen from him yet, or seen from the Justice League. So I really like what I'm hearing from them in regards to how they're going to go ahead and tackle this movie here. The idea that we're still going to get the fun side, the humor elements, but yet certainly some heart and vulnerability in here. What did you guys think about just hearing that from the director and the writer of this film?
Exactly what I wanted to hear for the most part, because I do think and it's really funny because you look at horror movie directors in general, a lot of them go on to make really awesome superhero movies, like James Gunn, both the writer and director of Doctor Strange, Sam Raimi and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's going to be the same thing here. You got the director of It working on the film, and we've seen how, even like in the first It movie where you had some of its scary moments, you definitely saw like he could have a lot of fun in there as well. So I think if they're doing the story of Flashpoint, but they're making it like the first Flash movie, I think that's the perfect element that you would need for it, because for starting out a Flash franchise, you got to have some fun. And if you're going to start it out with a story like Flashpoint, I think that gives them, I'm still standing by my statement of saying I don't think that's the right movie to use for your first film. If you're going to use that for your first film, you got to make sure you can have that emotion, but you also got to be able to have a lot of fun with it as well. And I think he's a perfect director to have that.
What do you think, Indy?
I'm thinking the same thing. He took the words right out my mouth when he was talking about it. I do believe that I trust them a lot more with this now that I'm seeing more. And this is without even seeing a trailer or any footage. You could tell the passion and the love that they have about this movie. The writer, just them making sure that everybody who has something important, you know what I'm saying, is introduced, and that they all seem like they really want to do this movie, because we know we've been having problems with writers, directors, producers. So hopefully this is the team that stays together, because this is the team that I actually cling to as far as when it comes to this movie. If they have any more trouble, that's when I'm going to be like, you know what, I'm off this. I don't even care anymore.
I can see that too. You make a good point, because based off of how we have seen the direction of this movie go, to finally at least be able to see people's enthusiasm, hear them talk about this film, see them all just kind of coming like back and forth off of each other, you really get to like their enthusiasm for this movie is pretty infectious. Like I really want to see what they wind up doing with this movie. And for a film that had a lot of question marks, I feel like they're definitely going to hit that tone that I think a lot of us are certainly hoping for. And I think, Stewart, kind of go off of what you said about the idea of like horror directors and horror writers coming over from that genre and making comic book films. I think it is because of the fact that they know how to capture that tone and that vibe, and really dive into your emotions, if you will, because those are really important aspects to horror films. So to be able to carry that over to still being able to draw out people's vulnerability and getting deep into your emotions, pull you at your heartstrings, and make you feel stuff, I think that's definitely important.
Fully agree.
But yeah, guys, overall, listen, I think this is probably the most hope that we've had for the Flash movie, certainly going forward. So I'm really, really pumped. But, leading into this Flash panel, I was really eager to get into this multiverse sort of one-on-one panel also. We had some big head honchos here, guys, on this particular panel. Greg Berlanti from CW, the head of DC, which looks to be Jim Lee as of right now, from the movie side of things, the president of Warner Brothers, Walter Hamada, all showcasing themselves on this panel. And what a panel it was. And if there's one thing that I've took from this panel, there's a ton for us to talk about, is that I honestly feel like this moment is probably one of the biggest moments for DC television, let alone DC films. Like, I honestly think that this crossover event and this moment between Ezra Miller and Grant Gustin is really going to launch DC from this point on into a completely new stratosphere. Because even before this moment, one, nobody saw this coming, and two, we didn't even think that this was allowed to happen. But now that we know that it has happened and it is allowed to happen, just the idea of seeing the mindset of the creative people behind the scenes, this to me will go down as one of the biggest and most important moments for DC television and WB. What do you guys think, though, overall in regards to that?
So one thing I will fully admit about myself when it came to starting out this DC universe, when the movie started, along with the CW doing their own thing, is for a while it did kind of frustrate me that they weren't interested in having one cohesive universe like Marvel was doing, but it's grown on me a lot over time. And I think this was really the moment where I kind of realized, you know what, it is probably better that they keep all their, things separated, because, just because they're in different universes, that doesn't mean they can't, collide, but it also means that we can get different versions of a lot of these really unique characters, because a lot of times, everyone has their very specific, like, I think Batman's like the biggest example. Everyone has their very specific vision of what Batman has to be in each universe. Batman always has to be this, but it's not true. When you look at the Batman comic books, Batman, I think, has like one of the biggest changes throughout all of comic book history. And what I love about, having a DC multiverse, and hopefully, they get a lot less restrictive of which characters are allowed to be used on which shows, because this will let them have that whole concept of being able to explore the many different versions of Batman that we've had throughout the many years. We've had the campy Batman. We've had a Batman that kills people. I'm just saying, a lot of people deny that, but no, Batman did kill people at certain points, especially in the very beginning. And I think the same thing can be said with the Flash, as we see here, because one of my biggest gripes about Ezra Miller when I first saw him in Justice League is I'm just kind of like, this guy doesn't feel like a Barry Allen. He feels like a Wally West to me. But kind of now seeing both him and Grant Gustin together, it's kind of like that moment of realization where I'm like, you know what? This is Barry Allen. It's just a different Barry Allen, and that's okay because we can get all these different versions of Barry Allen now. We now have like this whole multiverse that really gives writers an excuse to share their, you know, specific visions on their characters. So it honestly, I think the idea of having the multiverse panel right before the Flash panel was like the perfect way to like kind of show that that's what they were going for.
I could definitely agree with you on everything you said, and it's probably the only time you're ever going to see me and Stewart agreeing 100% on something ever on this platform. Now, my biggest thing was, and we talked about this in the chat, is the way Jim Lee gave credit to Berlanti for taking on the hardest part of what it was and putting this multiverse together. And one of the key things we saw is we saw those images from the Flash suit before, and then right before they showed those images, you heard Berlanti talk about how the Flash, how Ezra Miller's Flash got his name from our Grant Gustin Flash. He didn't have a name before then. And the admiration he had of how breathable and how comfortable the suit may be. And then you see these and then and then you see these images and they look closer to what Grant Gustin's Flash suit, you know what I'm saying, looks like. He took off the heavy tank armor. You know, all this stuff is going to be amazing to me, especially if you look at they're doing a Flashpoint, and the birth of Ezra Miller's Flashpoint was a meeting he had with the Berlanti versus Flash. And how important, as Stewart said, that TV universe could have actually been to the movie universe if they would have did it earlier. So big shots to Greg Berlanti, because he's probably now the godfather of what we're finna get in the entire DC movieverse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can definitely say Greg Berlanti certainly did all the heavy lifting for sure, right? I mean, even though he said that, I think he said, you know, when they first started off with Arrow, where they're at now certainly wasn't even on their mind. But I think he mentioned, you know, once he wind up introducing the Flash and he gets that moment between Grant Gustin and Stephen Amell on screen together, it really just opens up a flood of ideas and creativity and just possibilities of where you can go. So I honestly love seeing everybody show Greg Berlanti certainly some love for what he built upon. And you can even see just some of the frustration that Greg Berlanti experienced, because he even mentioned the idea that, you know, the old regime, if you will, the idea of being able to utilize certain characters, but oh wait, we can't use these characters because they're using those characters over there, and then yet all these characters get thrown on the shelf and are certainly never used. I mean, we saw that as a perfect example with, you know, Suicide Squad comes to mind for us. I'm sure there are probably other examples from the television universe.
Deathstroke. Mm-hmm. How Deathstroke was stripped away like mid-season, and then they never even used him in the movies like that.
So yeah,
did they? They didn't use Deathstroke in the movies at all.
No, they used him for an end credit stinger. That was it.
Yeah, that was about it. But so for me, this really just kind of highlights just the idea of talking about just a whole new life when it comes to new management here. The idea that you have people like Walter Hamada and Jim Lee who are now very much open to this idea of seeing what has been created for them and utilizing it to the best of its abilities. It really feels as though we've come to a place where the handcuffs are now off in regards to its creativity. So when it comes to television, the opportunity to see more characters being thrown in, possibly even brought in from the movies. I honestly feel like DC has become the world of never say never anymore. The idea that they've even talked about that there's certainly more to come. Now, I don't think it's going to be an idea of oversaturation because they did talk about the panel of picking and choosing certainly those particular moments. But I do think it's eventually going to lead to more crossovers on the television show. I'm trying to think what else I had in my notes here. I love the idea of them talking about how open Ezra Miller was to even coming into the Flash television show, how he just jumped at that idea immediately. And most of the stuff that they did was improv. I mean, I think that's got to shine a little bit more light on Ezra Miller as a person, right?
It was like he was asked, "Would you?" Yeah, sure. Whatever you want me to do.
It was exactly like in that scene from Justice League. Funny enough.
Yeah, whatever you want me to do, whatever's going to get this movie out. Oh, you think that help me get the movie out? Yeah, sure. I'll do whatever. I just want to be seen in costume more on top. Just whatever you want to do. Anything that gets me in this costume on screen, we're good.
Mm-hmm.
And them talking about what they had to go through, how they had to find a suit. Hopefully, he still fits the suit. You know what I'm saying? Everything like that. I'm starting to wonder if Cisco develops this new suit for him. Like, it's so many different things they could do with this movie now that can reflect everything that's going to happen in the show. He could change the multiverse back to something else. You know what I'm saying? That ends up reflected. They got a lot they could do now. I'm just hoping that they do it. And another thing they talked about was having, you know what I'm saying, like the separate verses. Like how you have the Joker, how you have what possibly what you brought up, Stewart, as the Batman, you know what I'm saying, being something that isn't totally relatable to what's happening with everything else because it exists in its own, you know what I'm saying, world, its own little multiverse thing.
The idea of Matt Reeves building out Gotham City and just Gotham in general. So it seems like Matt Reeves has his own sandbox he gets to play in.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be really, really, really cool, man. That to me, I got way more information out of that Multiverse 101. Like I thought it was gonna be explanation on, this is how we did this is how we did that, this is why we did this. But then having the 3 guests that they had and them going into detail on what they were trying to do was way more than I thought, because we're so used to WB being and DC being tight-lipped about everything. We're not used to them just coming out and just, yeah, sure. All that exists. All that's in one bubble. And if we want to play with it, we can. And I think that only happens because you end up with people in these positions that you have now, like Jim Lee, like Amada, like, you know what I'm saying, Berlanti. I don't think you get that if you don't eventually have the 3 of them ending up where they're at.
Yeah, absolutely not, man. I mean, they talked about the idea that there's plenty more to come. The idea of bleeding into the idea of telling more stories doesn't necessarily have to fit within sort of continuity any longer. And yeah, that's what he did go ahead and start referencing, the idea that everybody has their own bubble. The Joker's in its own world. Matt Reeves' Batman is in its own world. The idea that maybe even Elseworld stories at some point in time could be explored, really showing that there's kind of no limitations in regards to where they could potentially go with it. And so while they also did give Greg Berlanti a ton of praise, I did love the idea that they showcased Jim Lee as well. The idea of Jim Lee really being at the center of all this, sort of in between the movies and the television, and really being the one to kind of keep it all together, certainly, if you will. I guess a great comparison for this would kind of be like, I wouldn't necessarily say quite like a Kevin Feige, but I'm kind of thinking maybe like a Jon Favreau, or maybe even like a Dave Filoni. Maybe I'm trying to figure out what a comparison is.
I think it'd be closer to Favreau than Filoni. It's similar to a Favreau type thing, as AJ says. And think about how long ago Flash season 2 was. We're getting ready to start season 7. Yeah, isn't Jeff Johns the chief creative officer of all the CW shows? Jeff Johns stepped down in 2018.
Yeah, I thought he was. I don't know exactly what his official title is right now. Let me see.
I want to say he still has executive producer credit, but he doesn't like really have creative control over any of the shows except for the ones that excuse me, that he specifically works on. And I think the only 2 shows that he specifically works on are Stargirl and Titans, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't he also like a writer for that show?
Yeah, it was June 11, 2018. This comes from the LA Times. Jeff Johns stepped down from being the chief creative executive because he wanted to return focus to his writing, and he'll become a full-time writer and producer for Warner Brothers and DC films and television shows.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we see right now, especially with him and Stargirl.
Yeah, which I think was the best move for him, because that's where to me that's where he excelled at. I think it was too much of I feel like he was limited in being in a higher position to, you know what I'm saying, create freely, because he was over people's creative ideas, you know, and couldn't really infuse what he wanted to do. And now he can actually put his ideas to paper You know what I'm saying? And really let it flow. Is sometimes being that rung down is better for your career when it's where you're able to express yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's the position that Jim Lee has taken over, because he was part of Jeff Johns was part of the old guard for the DC movies. We unfortunately see how that went, and now we've got Jim Lee sort of in his seat, I believe, and look at, like, the floodgates have certainly been open in regards to this. So I'm really pumped, man. The idea of, like, this for me sort of solidifies the idea that DC has found its footing, the idea of what it wants to be, right? I mean, that's really been a huge question mark that I think we've been trying to ask ourselves. You know, in the past, we were very much along the lines of, you know, hey, follow that sort of Marvel formula, right? That formula to success. And while I think we've kind of seen Marvel, in a sense, shrink itself a little bit, if you look at DC very much has now sort of expanded itself. The idea that it's got 8 years of television under its belt, that they've now incorporated into this massive universe that includes the movies. It's technically all connected, if you will. Just all on their different Earths and universes and things like that. So for me, it's going to be really interesting to see how the tide turns for DC going forward, because I feel like it's building up a ton of enthusiasm for what DC is capable of doing. Whereas when you look at something like Marvel, they've canceled all their television shows for the most part. They're trying any television shows that they are creating are very much linked into the MCU continuity. And I'm not saying either or is better or best. I'm just showcasing that we finally have sort of both of these franchises or companies, if you will, sort of now embarking on their own path. And I think it's great that they're standing out from each other finally.
Mm-hmm. I think one huge advantage that DC kind of has over Marvel at this point is with Marvel, I feel like, you definitely feel like the limitation a lot of the writers have with what they can and can't do. Same with the directors of it, because, with Kevin Feige, he has to make sure that it all kind of fits his vision, his world, essentially. And, part of that pettiness inside of me thinks that might be why he ended up canceling all the, or not him specifically, but like why there hasn't really been much of an effort to revive any of the Netflix shows, or same with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. not like having really any huge tie into the MCU. I think it's because those shows have a very different vision from his. But like with DC, I feel like there's just kind of that whole thing of, it doesn't matter if it fits a specific vision. We want it to fit the vision of whoever is writing that specific property, whoever's writing the Flash TV show. We want the Flash to fit your vision of that version of the Flash. Who's ever writing the Flash movie, the Flash can fit your version of the Flash in that movie,
To be honest with you, I feel like, personally speaking, as I said in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. season finale, I feel like it has a bigger tie-in than what people might think. They just expect people to understand what it is. But what I get out of this, or what's going on, is that we know there's a lot of naysayers about, especially the CW Berlantiverse shows. I don't call it Arrowverse anymore. It's for now ever Berlantiverse, especially after this panel.
Fair enough.
It's the Berlantiverse.
I'll give you that.
But now it's like the one thing that they had to say down about it more than anything is the movies don't need the shows. Well, to be perfectly honest with you now, that I don't think you have a Flash movie. I don't think this world opens up for you unless these Arrowverse shows, these Berlanti, say, I got to train myself to do it. These Berlantiverse shows do what they do. Because to be honest with you, this is the only thing that's been going while these movies have been on the downtrod, because it's a lot of movies that aren't very good. And if DC is going to follow Marvel in anything, the one thing that I would like them to do that Marvel does very well, explore new characters. It not only expand the universe, expand the basic characters that we got, because the big 4 or 5 that you keep using, I don't know how many different Batmans we'd have had, is getting kind of old when we have Green Lanterns, Martian Manhunters. That's something that the
Blue Beetles, like, don't be afraid to tackle some of them.
Yeah, that's something that the shows do very well. They'll explore these characters and at least introduce your fan base to some characters they ain't never seen, because all you see is Superman and Batman.
Yeah. And I think that's important. And again, we're not certainly saying that either or direction that Marvel or DC goes in is certainly the right one. I think they've all established a really unique footprint with what they're trying to do. You know, Kevin Feige has a plan. He's got a story that he's certainly trying to tell. You know, something that's really cinematic that we've never honestly have seen truly done like this before. So a major accomplishment in that, right? And you know, I'm pretty sure they're going to be clearly focusing on a little bit of the multiverse too. So I'm pretty sure it'll kind of expand for them as well. But DC just really seemingly has a great footing and a hold on what it certainly wants to become, and I think they're utilizing it really well as of right now. So major props to Greg Berlanti, major props to Walter Hamada, major props to Jim Lee for having that mindset to not be afraid to play in your bag and give all these different iterations of comic book stories an opportunity to finally kind of be told. And I think that's really stellar. I mean, considering the fact that DC has always really been known for its multiverse, I love the idea that they're really diving headlong into it and using it to their advantage.
Mm-hmm. Now, can we get an Elseworlds TV show, just an anthology series in the DC universe?
I'm gonna be honest,
would be awesome.
More than now ever, I'm wanting that Michael B. Jordan Superman movie, man. I'm not even gonna lie. Like,
you talking about the one comic they made right after Obama?
Was that
after Obama became president? Yeah.
Well, that's
no,
funny.
that actually was a well written story. All I know is that the more we get into it, get into this DC fandom, the more I want to see the next thing. I mean, you still got the Suicide Squad. We still got Snyder Cut to talk about. We still got Batman. You still got the Flash TV series. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna do it today. Man, it's a lot for you guys to stick around and see, and it's a lot for us to discuss left.
Oh yeah,
guys. So our next panel, in fact, will be Suicide Squad. We're probably going to go live around 3:45, ladies and gentlemen. So if you, we're definitely going to be talking a little bit more about the Suicide Squad panel that dropped this afternoon as well, along with the behind-the-scenes footage that they wind up showing. So guys, yeah, definitely go ahead and continue to stick with us all afternoon long, and probably even into the evening for the Batman panel later on as well. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for us here. So we'll definitely see you guys back here in several minutes. And until then, guys, do us a big favor. Let us know your thoughts on the Flash panel, on some of the concept art that they went ahead and revealed to us today as well. Let your thoughts be known in the live chat or the comment section box below. So until next time, guys, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. We'll see you later.